He said train my niece or leave. After 11 years of dedication I was thrown out like trash. I smiled, handed back my badge and said hope tomorrow's demo with the investors goes well. The next morning he panicked when I stared at Mason across the glass table in his office. Sunlight slashed through the blinds, lighting up the arrogance on his face. Fire me, then, I said quietly. He blinked, surprised at my calm. Jenna, you're replaceable. Don't make me regret giving you a decade. The words landed like a slap across my face. I had been ready to walk into the boardroom, prepared to present a year's worth of work that could redefine Horizon Dynamics. Instead, I was standing in Mason Grant's office at 7:59 a.m., hearing the man I built an empire for strip me of every ounce of dignity. Replaceable, after 11 years of missed birthdays, sleepless nights, and fixing disasters no one else could handle. 11 years of giving this company every part of myself, only to be told I was nothing more than a spare part. I straightened my shoulders and looked at him. Mason Grant, CEO of Horizon. Was everything people expect a leader to be on the surface? Charismatic smile, tailored suit, a voice that could sell a lie as truth, but behind the glass walls and polished charm, he was a man who thrived on control, who built his throne on the backs of those too loyal to fight back. And now, he was throwing me aside for Olivia, his 22-year-old niece, fresh out of college, with no background in systems architecture. The same Olivia who couldn't explain a basic algorithm in the one meeting she bothered to attend. Yet Mason wanted her trained, by me, to carry the torch. When I refused, he didn't ask why. He didn't care. Nepotism doesn't negotiate, it commands. The office was too bright, sunlight slicing through blinds, making everything feel harsher, colder. Mason leaned forward, hands clasped like a man delivering mercy. Security will escort you out, effective immediately. My heart pounded, but my face didn't flinch. Shock burned through me, humiliation settling like lead in my chest, but I swallowed every word, screaming to get out, instead. I gave him a smile so small it almost hurt. Is that your final decision? He smirked, thinking he had won. If only he knew. The office felt smaller than it had ever been. Walls that once framed late nights and victories now pressed in like a cage. My desk, the same one I had worked at for 11 years, looked foreign, sterile, almost cruel in its neatness. I lowered the empty cardboard box onto the surface and began to pack. Slowly, methodically, each motion deliberate, because it was the only way to keep my hands from trembling. My favorite pen, a stack of notes scrawled during midnight strategy calls, the coffee mug with a fading company logo that used to mean pride. Around me, whispers floated like smoke. Colleagues paused at their monitors, pretending to type while their eyes darted in my direction. Some looked away quickly, others held my gaze for a second too long, their pity burning like acid. Can you believe it? Someone muttered behind the partition. After everything she did for Horizon, I pretended not to hear, pretended I didn't feel the knife of humiliation sliding deeper with every stolen glance. Across the floor, Mason's voice cut through the tension, firm and detached. Make sure her access is gone within the hour. Wipe every credential. Security nodded, fingers already flying across a keyboard. In seconds, my digital existence inside Horizon began to disappear. Files, permissions, years of architecture reduced to a blinking cursor. I kept packing, silent. My face neutral. My heart beat anything but. There was no room for rage. Not yet. Rage was loud. I needed quiet. Quiet had always been my weapon. As I placed the last framed photo into the box, my fingertips brushed something small and familiar at the bottom drawer. A Mate black USB drive. I picked it up casually, like it was nothing more than another forgotten trinket, but my pulse told a different story. The drive felt warm against my skin, humming with the weight of secrets. Inside were the root keys, the unlisted scripts, the silent guardian of Sentinel's final layer. The company didn't know it existed. Mason didn't know. No one did. I slid it into my jacket pocket, with the same calm you'd use to pocket spare change. Then I closed the drawer. The box. My heart. All with the same deliberate motion. When I finally stood, the room seemed colder, voices quieter. I lifted the box, walked toward the exit, and didn't look back. If anyone noticed the steel in my eyes, they'd never admit it, but I felt it. The sharp, unspoken promise, glinting in the silence. This wasn't the end. It was the opening move. Traffic crawled along 7th Avenue. Horns blaring in sharp bursts that barely pierced the roar in my head. The city looked the same as it always did. Coffee carts steaming on corners. Cyclists weaving through gaps. Glass towers catching the morning sun. But to me, everything had shifted. I gripped the wheel tighter. The cardboard box on the passenger seat sliding with every turn. Inside were fragments of a decade. A chipped coffee mug. Worn notebooks. Pens that had signed away years of my life. The silence in the car pressed against me, thick with humiliation, and something far heavier. Betrayal. 11 years. 11 years building Sentinel from a fragile idea into a fortress no competitor could touch. Nights fueled by vending machine coffee. Weekends erased by deadlines, all traded for promises. Equity, leadership, security. Empty words now scattered like ash. My phone buzzed against the console. A text from St. Margaret's Hospital. Jenna, your mother's treatment estimate has been updated. Please confirm payment arrangements. I stared at the screen, throat tightening. Throat. I had been carrying that weight quietly for months. The medications. The specialists. The mounting bills. Every extra hour I gave Horizon was supposed to make sure she'd never worry about money again. And now, Mason had ripped that future away in under 5 minutes. Anger flared so hot it blurred my vision. For a second, I imagined slamming the wheel, screaming into the leather seats, letting the rage burn through me. But rage solves nothing. Rage is loud, messy. And I don't do messy. I pulled into a quiet side street, killed the engine, and opened my laptop. Fingers steady now. Heart slowing into a rhythm I knew well. The rhythm of control. Within seconds, the login screen for Secure Layer Portal glowed against the dim interior of the car. Username. Token. Biometric scan. Each step slid into place like tumblers in a lock. And then, home. Lines of code danced across the screen. A world that still belonged to me. Sentinel-9. My creation. My rules. Horizon might have the hardware, but the soul. The architecture, the kill switches, the 17-layer validation remained tethered to me. And layer 17? That was mine alone. I traced the edge of the black USB in my jacket pocket, feeling its weight like a secret heartbeat. Inside this drive was the root command. The silent king on the chessboard. Mason thought he ended the game this morning. He didn't even know it had begun. Another message pinged. This one from Horizon's board. Live demo at 9:15 a.m. Confirm system integrity. I almost laughed. Let him try. Without me, Sentinel wasn't a weapon. It was a locked vault. For the first time since 7:59 a.m., I felt something sharp cut through the fog of anger and fear. Not despair. Not defeat. Purpose. They took my title. They took my seat. But the one thing they needed most, that still belonged to me. The glow from my laptop screen was the only light in the car. Outside, the city pulsed with morning chaos. Delivery trucks groaning past. Commuters clutching coffee cups like lifelines. Inside, it was silent. Save for the steady click of my fingers across the keys, the Secure Layer Portal opened like a vault door, revealing the skeleton of a system I had built bone by bone. Sentinel-9. My design. My sleepless nights. My signature on every line of code. Horizon thought they owned it. They thought firing me erased my fingerprints. They couldn't have been more wrong. I navigated through the console with a kind of precision born from obsession. Each layer was a checkpoint. Each command a key sliding into place. Layer 1, verified. Layer 2, verified. Layer 3, verified. I exhaled slowly as numbers climbed. Every success pulse felt like blood rushing back into limbs gone numb. 11 layers deep. I paused. A strange calm settled over me. The kind that comes right before a storm breaks. This wasn't revenge for the sake of ego. This was reclamation. This was survival. By the time I hit layer 17, my heart had slowed to a metronome beat. The screen flashed red. Final authentication. Biometric plus. Private token required. I reached into my jacket. Fingers brushing the cool edge of the matte black USB. The weight of it grounded me. That drive was my insurance policy. My silent rebellion. I plugged it in. The soft click sounding louder than traffic outside. The system hummed to life, waiting for the last piece. I pressed my thumb against the scanner. The machine word. A quiet acceptance. Then the words I'd been waiting for. Access granted. For the first time since 7:59 a.m. I felt something ignite deep in my chest. Power. Not the performative power Mason flaunted in boardrooms. Not the paper-thin power of a title on glass doors. Real power. The kind that comes from knowledge, foresight, and the courage to bet on yourself when no one else will. The dashboard blinked once, then streamed a new message across the screen. License expiration. Exactly 2 minutes after unauthorized termination. A laugh, sharp and involuntary, slipped past my lips. Mason had no idea that the second he ordered security to revoke my credentials, the countdown had begun. In 120 seconds, Horizon Dynamics would lose the legal right to deploy Sentinel. Not later. Not eventually, immediately. They had turned me into a liability. I had turned them into a ticking clock. I leaned back in the driver's seat, watching the timer start its silent march. Somewhere uptown, Mason was probably shaking hands with investors, selling a future he didn't own anymore. And here I was, in a parked car with coffee cooling in the cup holder, holding the fate of a billion-dollar system in my hands. Replaceable? No, Mason, indispensable. By the time Mason strode into Horizon's executive boardroom, it was 9:15 a.m. sharp. He looked every inch the confident CEO. Tailored suit, silver tie, the swagger of a man about to close the deal of the year. Investors from Vance Capital sat around the long table, sipping coffee, expecting a live demo that would seal a billion-dollar partnership. "Gentlemen," Mason began, voice rich with charm, "today, you'll witness the future of global security, Sentinel-9. Applause sprinkled politely across the room as Mason gave a subtle nod to the lead engineer. Screens lit up with Horizon's signature blue interface. Fingers flew across keyboards, executing the launch sequence. For 2 full seconds, everything seemed perfect. Then it happened. Authentication required. Architect biometric verification missing. The text glared in bold red across every screen. The lead engineer froze. A second message followed. Access locked. Contact system architect. Panic rippled through the room. Investors leaned forward, brows furrowed. Mason's smile stiffened as he barked, "Reset and rerun." They tried. 3 times. Same message. In the corner. Olivia, dressed like this was her runway, shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Her glossy lips parted, but no words came out. "Is there a problem?" asked one of the investors. Voice cool. "Dangerous. Just a minor glitch." Mason lied smoothly, though the pulse at his temple told a different story. "Give us a moment." Behind the calm facade. His blood ran cold. This system had been bulletproof, or so he thought. He yanked out his phone, stabbing at the screen, half a mile away. I sat in a quiet cafe by the park, watching steam curl from my cup around me. Life went on. Laptops hummed. Spoons clinked against ceramic. My world had narrowed to the glow of my screen, where a single line confirmed what I already knew. Authentication. Lock. Active. The phone buzzed against the table. "Mason." I let it ring twice before sliding to answer. "Jenna," he snapped, skipping pleasantries. "You've crossed a line. This is IP theft, and I will bury you in litigation." I stirred my coffee slowly, letting the silence stretch before answering in a voice as calm as the latte art dissolving in my cup. "Check the patent registry." "What?" "Do it," I said softly, and ended the call. The truth would hit him like a wrecking ball. Horizon didn't own Sentinel. They leased it, and the lease ended the moment he signed my termination papers. I closed my laptop, savoring the quiet hum of the cafe, the soft murmur of strangers who didn't know that a billion-dollar empire was crumbling while I stirred sugar into my coffee. Chaos was erupting uptown. But here, peace. For the first time all morning, I smiled. Mason's office door slammed so hard, the glass shivered. He paced like a predator in a shrinking cage, jaw tight, fists balled. Across the table, Horizon's lead counsel scrolled frantically through a patent database. When the results appeared, her face drained of color. "Sir, the patent for Sentinel-9 isn't under Horizon Dynamics," she said carefully, like speaking too fast might ignite him. "It's filed under an LLC, Collins Innovations, registered owner, Margaret Collins." Mason stopped dead. "Who the hell is Margaret Collins?" "She's Jenna's mother." For a long second, the room was silent, except for Mason's sharp intake of breath. Then he exploded. "Get me every attorney we have on retainer, now. I don't care what it costs. I want that patent frozen by noon." Meanwhile, I sat in my apartment, laptop open on the kitchen counter, a mug of untouched coffee cooling beside it. Sunlight poured through the blinds, but it felt like the air had grown heavier. The calm from the cafe, replaced by a sense of unease crawling under my skin. The email arrived at 10:48 a.m. Subject line in bold red. "Urgent. They're filing an injunction against your LLC." I stared at the screen, heart thudding once. Hard. The message was from Cooper, my attorney, the one man who knew the whole story. His words were razor sharp. "Horizon is seeking an emergency injunction to freeze the Sentinel patent. If granted, they'll regain temporary control until a court decides ownership. You need to move fast." For the first time today, my throat tightened with something dangerously close to fear. I had played every move with precision, but Mason was rich, ruthless, and desperate. A temporary injunction could strip me of leverage, undoing everything in one stroke. I pulled in a slow breath, forcing my mind to cut through the panic. "Think, Jenna. The LLC paperwork. The filings. Every email timestamp proving I secured ownership 2 years ago. They were my shield. If I could get them organized and filed before the hearing request hit the docket." My fingers flew across the keyboard, summoning encrypted archives, dragging contracts into folders marked for submission. Cooper's number flashed on my phone. "They'll argue you breached fiduciary duty," he said the moment I answered. "We counter with proof the LLC predates the Horizon licensing agreement. Get me that timeline, now." I ended the call, pulse hammering as I worked. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere far away. Inside, the only sound was the relentless tapping of keys and my own breathing, sharp and uneven. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was survival, mine and Mom's. And if Mason wanted war, he just picked the wrong battlefield. The boardroom doors opened with a theatrical sweep as Mason strode in, his hand resting lightly on Olivia's shoulder, like she was the company's secret weapon instead of its ticking liability. Her designer blazer shimmered under the fluorescent lights and her confidence looked freshly rehearsed. Chin high, smile polished, phone clutched in one manicured hand. "Gentlemen," Mason announced, his voice booming with a confidence he didn't feel. "Allow me to introduce Olivia Grant, future face of Horizon's Innovation Division." Investors shifted in their seats, cameras pivoted for a better view. A few reporters at the back of the room raised their brows, but Mason didn't care. He needed a win and this was his Hail Mary. Olivia strutted to the console like a runway model, her heels clicking against polished floors. She propped her phone against a coffee carafe, angling it perfectly. "Just capturing a behind-the-scenes moment," she chirped, oblivious to the tension coiling around her. The little red light blinked live, sending Horizon's disaster straight to her thousands of followers and every financial blog that monitored her feed. "Go ahead, Olivia," Mason urged, his smile taut as wire. "Show them how seamless Sentinel really is." She typed in her credentials with a flourish, as if cracking the Da Vinci Code, and pressed enter for one fleeting second. The screen blinked blue, then in bold crimson letters. The words roared back like a slap across the face. "Architect biometric verification required." A hush fell so heavy, it felt like gravity had doubled. Olivia blinked at the screen, confusion staining her perfect features. She tried again, fingers fumbling now. Same response. "Access locked. Contact system architect." The investors exchanged sharp glances. One whispered, not softly enough. "Where's Jenna Collins?" Mason's jaw ticked. "It's a minor system flag," he said, voice coated in sugar and steel. "We'll have it cleared in moments," but there was no clearing it. Every attempt bounced off the same wall, layer 17. The live feed on Olivia's phone captured everything. The red warning, the investors' stiff expressions, Mason's growing desperation. Comments flooded in faster than the IT team could breathe. "What's happening at Horizon? 1.3B system can't even launch?" And then the headlines hit. "Horizon demo disaster goes viral." Stats, stock alerts pinged phones across the room. Shares dipped 3 points, then 5. Mason's skin flushed a dangerous shade as reporters scribbled notes like sharks scenting blood. Olivia, cheeks blazing crimson, snatched her phone, ending the stream with trembling fingers. Too late, the damage had detonated across social media. Trending under Thatcher Sentinel fail, Mason didn't look at her. Couldn't. His empire was unraveling in real time, and the whole world was watching. The email came at 11:12 a.m., a cold, clinical ping that shattered the brief calm I'd built for myself. One glance at the subject line was enough to twist my stomach into knots. "Alert, multiple unauthorized access attempts detected, layer 17. My breath stalled for a second. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. The steady hum of my laptop, now a warning siren in disguise. They were coming for me. I clicked the alert, eyes scanning the log. 10 failed attempts in 60 seconds, then 15, then 30. The IPs weren't amateur level, they were masked, bouncing across international nodes. This wasn't Horizon's in-house team fumbling in panic. Mason had gone nuclear. He'd hired professionals. I gripped the edge of the counter, nails biting into wood, forcing myself to stay still even as adrenaline roared in my veins. If they cracked layer 17, everything I had, Sentinel, the leverage, the future I'd built on desperation and precision, would vanish. And with it, every chance of paying for Mom's care. Focus. I slid into the system's command line, fingers pounding with surgical precision. Layer 17 wasn't just a lock, it was a fortress I designed for this exact scenario. Still, no fortress is invincible under siege, and these hackers were good. Too good, for a moment. An image flashed in my mind. Mason, jaw clenched, promising vengeance as he threw money at anyone who could dismantle me. He wasn't just trying to win, he was trying to erase me. Another ping. Attempt threshold exceeded. Breach probability, 63%. My pulse spiked, 63%. If they gained even partial access, they could trigger the deployment license. My hands trembled for the first time today. Then clarity cut through the chaos like glass shattering. A plan, risky, brutal, but mine. I opened a secondary shell and uploaded a string of code I'd written months ago, but prayed I'd never need. DE17, protect.p. Its purpose was simple: mimic success, then punish greed. When the hackers reached what they believed was the master key, my decoy script would congratulate them, unlock a dummy dashboard and simultaneously trigger an irreversible process. Revoke all Horizon credentials and disable system access for 24 hours. A digital scorched earth. Lines of code cascaded down the screen. 10 seconds later, the system blinked. Decoy sequence active. Then silence. No more breach alerts. They thought they'd won. They'd tell Mason he owned Sentinel again. And when he tried to launch, Horizon would hit a wall so hard it would echo in their earnings calls for years. I leaned back, chest heaving, palms slick against the keyboard. Relief washed through me in sharp waves, chased by a single, undeniable truth. The war wasn't over. It had only changed battlegrounds and I was done playing defense. The Langford Hotel's private lounge smelled of polished wood and old money. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors, and the low hum of muted conversations created a backdrop of quiet power. My pulse thudded as I walked toward the far corner where two men in tailored suits sat flanking a woman with a presence so sharp it felt like standing near glass. "Ms. Collins," she greeted, extending a hand adorned with a single platinum band. "I'm Evelyn Vance." The name landed like a hammer. Vance Capital, one of the biggest private equity players in tech. Mason had been courting them for months. Now they were calling me. I slid into the chair, spine straight despite the storm still thrumming inside me. Hours ago, I was patching legal firewalls and fighting off hackers. Now, I was here, still reeling but steadying because I had something Mason never did: the truth and the leverage that came with it. Evelyn folded her hands. "We've reviewed Horizon's licensing arrangement. To put it bluntly, it's worthless without you. You hold the keys, figuratively and literally." Her eyes locked on mine, unblinking. "What's your price?" For a moment, I just breathed, letting the weight of those words settle. My price? After everything, 11 years of sacrifice, promises broken, watching my mother's hospital bills pile up like tombstones, they were finally asking me what I was worth. "I'm not interested in a buyout," I said slowly, voice level. "I'm interested in a partnership, exclusive rights under a new entity, clean slate. Horizon is done." Evelyn's lips curved, the faintest flicker of admiration. "You're thinking bigger than Mason. Good." She leaned forward, sliding a folder across the table. Inside was a draft term sheet, numbers bold enough to make my breath hitch, figures Horizon could never dream of matching, not in their current freefall. I lifted my gaze. "One condition," I added, "my mother's treatment fund comes first, non-negotiable." "Done," Evelyn said without hesitation. Then came the twist, the one that snapped the last thread of tension coiled in my chest. "We don't just want your code, Jenna. We want you, chief architect for Sentinel Global, full creative control, name it in the contract." For the first time in 2 days, my lungs expanded without pain, control, power, freedom, not as revenge, but as reclamation. I signed the preliminary agreement with a hand that no longer shook. Across the table, Evelyn offered a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Congratulations," she said softly. "You just ended Horizon." As I left the lounge, city lights stretched like a galaxy through the windows, somewhere uptown. Mason was clinging to a sinking ship, and me, for the first time since 7:59 a.m. I wasn't drowning, I was steering the tide. At 10:30 a.m., my signature flowed across the dotted line in bold. Just 3 strokes of a pen, and the war was over. The weight I had carried for years, the humiliation, the exhaustion, the fear, lifted like smoke. For the first time in a decade, I could breathe without tasting iron. Evelyn Vance clasped my hand firmly. "Welcome to Sentinel Global, Chief Architect," she said, and the title sent a sharp thrill through me. Not a trophy, a reclamation, a nameplate carved out of survival and precision. By the time I stepped out of the Langford Hotel, the world outside had already begun to pivot. My phone buzzed with notifications, each one more brutal than the last. Horizon stock in freefall after demo disaster. Exclusive. Vance Capital signs $1.3 billion deal with former Horizon architect Olivia Grant, silent amid corporate meltdown. Somewhere uptown, Mason was learning what it felt like to choke on arrogance. The board had stripped him of his title within the hour, an unceremonious vote driven by panic and collapsing shares. Olivia, the so-called prodigy, had vanished from her social feeds, her name trending for all the wrong reasons under Sentinel fail. I imagined the boardroom, the chaos, the shouting, Mason's face paling as the lawyers whispered the words he'd never prepared to hear. "You don't own Sentinel. You never did." And yet, none of it stirred triumph in me. Not the scandal. Not the headlines. Not the thought of Mason's empire burning from the inside out. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about freedom. About ending a war that started the moment he told me I was replaceable. Hours later, the elevator doors slid open to a new floor. A new world. My office was minimalist. Glass walls, white light, and a view that stretched like possibility itself. On the desk sat a single object, a plaque engraved with 6 words that tasted like victory when I ran my fingers across them. Chief Architect, Sentinel Global. I stood there for a long moment, letting the silence settle like an old friend. Then I placed the plaque where it belonged, center stage, and sank into the leather chair that didn't creak under the weight of expectation. My reflection in the glass looked calm. Colder, maybe. Stronger, definitely. They thought I was replaceable. I whispered into the stillness, my voice steady as stone. They were wrong. Outside, the city kept moving, horns blaring, lights blinking, deals rising and collapsing like tides, but for me, everything had stilled. Because this wasn't just the end of Horizon, it was the beginning of mine. I've learned something powerful through this journey. You can give your whole heart to a company, but never let them own your worth. Titles can vanish, offices can lock you out. But your knowledge, your skill, your resilience, no one can take that from you. If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or told you were replaceable. Remember this: the value you bring doesn't end when their approval does. Sometimes, losing what you thought was everything is just the beginning of something far greater. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment like this? A time when you had to fight for your own worth? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this story spoke to you, tap that like button so more people can find it. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that they are stronger than any setback. And if you want more stories like this, about resilience, justice, and taking back your power, hit subscribe and join this community. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we rewrite endings.